Welcome back to Lineage of Lies, where we sit with the quiet, complicated stories of women who finally learned where the door is and how to close it gently. If a story ever makes you feel a little less alone at your own kitchen table, drop a comment and subscribe. The envelope was the exact color of the icing I use for wedding cakes. It sat on my bakery counter at 5 in the morning, propped against the register. The handwriting on the front belonged to the mother who gave me away for being a girl. They gave me back like a sweater that didn't fit. And 20 years later, they wanted the receipt. I thought one payment would make her disappear, $40,000 and a signature. But what she actually wanted couldn't fit in a checkbook. My name is Adele Kenny. I'm 31. I own a bakery called Kenny's outright, a sentence I used to practice in the mirror just to believe it. My husband Marcus builds furniture 2 doors down. Our daughter Nora is 1, 8 teeth and a laugh like a hiccup. My parents, Don and Hank, sold me this bakery for $1 and a promise to keep their sourdough starter alive. They are not my birth parents. They are the ones who stayed. I was 3 years old when Vera signed me over. Old enough that I have one ghost of a memory, a woman buttoning my coat too fast, cold vinyl against my legs. Dawn told me the truth when I was 10. She said my birth parents wanted a son and could only afford to raise one child well. So they chose. She didn't soften it. She just held my hand while I did the math no child should do. I built a life on that closed door. Bread doesn't care whether you were wanted. It just needs warmth, time, and someone paying attention. I gave it all 3. Then the letter came, calling me a name I'd never held, Ada. 3 paragraphs in, wrapped in velvet, she asked for $40,000. Not for herself, she said, but for my brother Bradley, who had such promise and needed college. She underlined family. She signed it your mother, Vera, as if the word were a fact instead of a thing you earn. My friend Priya, a paralegal, told me the law was clear. I owed her nothing. No money, no explanation. But then she added the sentence that undid it all, legally, sure. But you and I both know that's not the account she's trying to collect on. Because the account Vera meant had no laws protecting it, only the soft, hopeful part of me that had spent 20 years wondering if a mother somewhere cried. I wrote back refusing. Polite, firm. I blocked her number. But another voice inside me was doing the arithmetic. If one check made the guilt stop, maybe it was worth it just to be done. I almost wrote that check. If you've ever paid for peace that never came, you already know how this goes. A second cream envelope arrived with a photograph. Bradley, 19, half smiling like someone told him to. Vera's note was sharper now. He needs you. Your brother needs you. She'd learned a plea for herself bounced off me, so she swapped ammunition, the boy as shield. I turned the photo over. A baker's habit, you always check the bottom. On the back, in different handwriting, was my Aunt Marlene's return address. My aunt, the one who'd always seemed neutral, had been feeding Vera updates about my life for years. When I called, she sounded warm. I just sent her little updates so she stops worrying. She's your mother. Blood is blood. I asked her to stop, thanked her, and hung up. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like subtraction. I lost an aunt, and I gained a locked front door. Then Vera showed up. She parked across from my bakery, studied the gold letters spelling Kenny's, looked at me through the glass, and drove away. An hour later, Dawn called, shaking, to say a cream envelope had been left in her mailbox. Vera had gone straight to the softest door in my life. And 2 days after that, while Vera stood on their porch telling Dawn she was a thief who'd stolen me, Dawn's heart seized. A cardiac event. Mild, the doctors said, but no stress. I sat beside her hospital bed, and near dawn she woke, found my hand, and whispered, "Don't let her take you from me." Up until that moment, I'd been fighting to keep my peace, hoping there was a version where I paid a fee and it all went quiet. That version died in that hospital room. Vera would never stop. She would never come at me directly, she'd aim at the softest people I loved. So I drove the 3 hours to her house myself. Not to pay, but to find out what $40,000 was really for. Her neighborhood was tidy and tired. Before I could knock, the door opened and a teenager came down the steps carrying a duffel bag. Bradley. My chin on his face. He didn't know who I was. He called me ma'am. I said, "My name is Adele. I think Vera is my mother too." The color drained out of him. I had a sister. Mom said there was a baby before me, a girl, but it didn't work out. That was the phrase she'd given him. A baby that didn't work out. I asked him gently about college. He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. What college? He didn't want a university. He wanted a welding apprenticeship, hands-on, a real trade. He'd saved part of the cost himself, but every time he brought it up, Vera got that disappointed look and talked about the sister who threw away her chances. Meaning me. The cautionary tale. In the few minutes before Vera returned, he pointed me to a stack of bills on the kitchen table. The top one, past due, circled in Vera's handwriting. Under it, collections letters, a personal loan, money owed to relatives for wedding gifts she'd promised and never paid. The $40,000 was never for Bradley's education. It was Vera's debts. Bradley was the shield, the debt was the wound, and I was the deep pocket she'd been watching ripen for 2 decades. Vera came back, smiling, kettle screaming. "So, have you thought about how you'd like to send it?" And right there, the compromise I'd been carrying, send the money for Bradley, launder it clean, died. Because every dollar would go straight to the machine that discarded me and was now crushing my brother. I couldn't pay. I could only cut the wire. She'd already told the extended family I'd help. She was hosting a dinner that Sunday. A courtroom full of witnesses, so that if I said no, the shame would collect what her letters couldn't. "You'll come," she said. Not a question. I drove home 3 hours in the dark and didn't fall apart. Instead, something got very clear. She'd built a room. Fine. I would decide what happened in it. The next morning, I sat with an attorney and built a trust. Money for Bradley, enough for his welding program and tools. Locked in an account managed by an independent trustee, released only against verified invoices to the trade school. Not a dollar could be touched by Vera. It could only ever become the thing it was for. I sealed the papers in a cream envelope, the exact shade of wedding icing, so Vera would see it and think she'd won right up until she opened it. I called Bradley at the auto shop. I told him the truth about the money, and what I wanted to do instead. He was quiet so long I thought the line had dropped. Then, in a voice younger than 19, he said, "Nobody's ever asked me what I wanted before. You're the first person." Sunday, I drove back in my good coat. The house was full. Vera met me at the door, beaming with triumph. I was seated in the middle of the long table, introduced as Ada, to a room full of strangers who shared my blood. Dinner was a performance. Vera served Bradley first. Always the boy first, an old reflex no one questioned. An elderly great-aunt told the table how Vera had grown up the only girl among brothers, taught that a daughter's whole job was to produce sons. Vera hadn't invented the rule that discarded me. She'd been raised inside it. And I felt it, the pull of sympathy. But understanding is not absolution. The boy at the end of the table was still being fed first while his real life sat in a folder in my bag. Vera stood, tapped her glass, and turned to me with practiced warmth. "My Ada has generously agreed to help this family in our time of need. Especially her brother. Isn't that right, dear?" The trap closed. Every face turned to me, expecting the grateful daughter. A no would be a public betrayal. Beautiful machinery. I set down my fork and stood. I reached into my bag for the cream envelope. Vera's face flooded with victory. I didn't raise my voice. I just told the room, level as a countertop, what the money was actually for. No college. Collections. Wedding debts. Bradley wants a trade, and no one had ever asked him. Vera's mask shattered. You ungrateful, after everything I gave up for you. But I had a sentence in my chest now, given to me by my father Hank. He'd wiped his hands in the bakery and said, offhand, the truest thing, you don't get kept for being useful, Adele. You get kept for being ours. So I opened the envelope and pulled out the trust papers. This is money set aside for Bradley, I said. Enough for the welding program he actually wants. Held by a trustee, not this family. It can only be released for his education, his tools, his training, never for debts, never for anyone's reputation. It cannot be given to you, Vera. Ever. I slid the papers down the table toward the boy at the end. It's yours, Bradley, if you want it. Nobody else gets a vote. Vera's chair went over. She was loud now, coming apart in front of her own courtroom. You can't do this. I sacrificed my own child. You owe me. I stayed in my chair and answered with the truth I'd driven all that way to say. You didn't give me away, Vera. You gave me back. There's a difference. I will not give you $1. This is the last time you'll see me. I have a family. You are not in it. Then Bradley did the bravest thing I saw all night. He picked up the trust papers, stood, and in a voice that cracked and held anyway said, I want the welding program. That's what I've always wanted. He looked at his mother. She asked me what I wanted, Mom. You never did. Vera stared at him like the floor had opened. The son she'd staked everything on was choosing the sister, choosing his own honest dream over her whole ledger. I put my hand on his shoulder once, told him the trust attorney would call, and that he had a family now if he wanted one, 3 hours away, that smelled like bread. Then I walked out, down the steps, into the cold evening. I didn't look back. I had spent 28 years looking back at that house, wondering if a light was on for me. There was never a light. Only a ledger. And I was finally closing the book. Bradley started the welding program that fall. He sends me pictures. Sparks and steel, a real grin. Hank taught him to make a boule in the bakery. Vera never wrote again. Nora is 2 now. She stands on a stool at my elbow in the mornings, flour on her nose, and she has no idea she is the whole point. She will grow up in a house where love is not a bill, where she is kept every single day for no reason except that she is ours. I spent my whole life trying to be useful enough to keep. It turns out the people who actually love you never once do the math. A cream envelope, a borrowed name, a table full of people waiting for me to fold. I didn't. If you've ever had to decide that love should never cost your whole self, that some doors are meant to close gently and stay closed, then this table was set for you, too. Tell me in the comments about the door you finally closed. And subscribe to Lineage of Lies. I'll keep a seat warm, and the ovens on for you.